Squack. I'm Kayla, and I'm here with my fellow bookwomen today, and we are back in our bookwomen studio in Amiskwachi. After our awesome adventure out to the res last week, which was great, we are back in the city. Doing our day jobs.
In the studio, aka Sheila's living room.
That's true. Yeah. It's not the best studio, though.
Yeah, it's true.
It is. It comes with pineapples.
Yeah.
It's true.
And supper.
Yeah.
We're so well looked after here.
Of course. And I'm Sheila, and I am lazy, so everyone records here. So thanks. Thanks for coming over. I'll give you supper and pineapple.
Jeez. So, I'm Tanya, and I'm glad we're not at my house because it's a fucking mess.
I feel like your kids would scream through the whole thing too.
They would.
Dylan might not, but Milo would be like, "Whoa!"
Oh
freaking
God!
out.
Yeah, that's why we have that. So my friend cross-stitched me a picture, and it says, "Don't mind the mess. My kids are making memories," and making memories is crossed out, and it's replaced by being assholes. So I put that front and center, so I get a free pass.
Awesome.
These are cute though.
Oh yeah. You haven't seen them melt down, but that's
Whatever.
a whole other
they're
story.
little gingers. Of course they're gonna melt down.
It's because it's a ginger thing.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My kids are too gingers. They're starting to get their freckles, and it's so cute.
Aww.
It's
Freckles.
adorable.
I wish I had freckles.
You're jealous.
I am jealous.
And we're here with a special guest today.
When you say special guest,
Always.
always special guest.
All of our guests are special.
Hi. Thank you for.
It's all good. What is your name?
My name is Brittany Johnson. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome.
Welcome to our studio.
I really like the studio.
Yeah. It's a live-in studio.
We even have a studio cat.
A
Yeah.
cat is a nice touch.
No, she's hiding, but yeah, she's around.
She's
Yeah.
around.
I mean, we also come with we don't, but Sheila comes with a man that cuts us pineapple.
Yeah. And then leaves.
And then leaves.
He's the best.
That's a perfect man.
Yeah, no complaints, that's for sure. So, Brittany, who are you, and how do we know you, and that intro thing that
We're supposed
people
to do.
like us do? Who are you? Where do you come from?
We should have a light and shine it on you. Who are you? Why are you Why are you here?
I grew up about 45 minutes south of Edmonton in a place called Camrose.
Oh, yeah.
The look. Oh, I know Camrose.
I do. I grew up in Toefield.
Okay. So, little rivalry.
Yeah, my mom went. She went to work in Camrose, Ross Haven.
Okay. I used to work at Bethany. So.
Oh,
Oh.
small world.
Yeah. So that's where I grew up. And my family is, my mom, she's a member of Beaver First Nation, also Métis. So my family's from way up north in Treaty Territory, near High Level in Fort Vermilion, but I didn't grow up there. I grew up in the Camrose area. And now I live just outside of Edmonton. But I am currently a PhD student at the U of A in English and Film Studies. And I'm really enjoying that, and it's a little background about me.
What are you studying?
So right now I am focused on specifically looking at beadwork as text, but also relating that to sexual and reproductive justice for Indigenous women. So some of that work looks like beading uteruses and vulva and mammary glands. I'm obsessed with mammary glands right now. And then also related, and part of that is that I also am a burlesque performer. I'm one half of Beaver Hills Burlesque. My performance name is Fanny LuPhine, and my partner is Pemmican Milkshake, aka Kirsten Lindquist, and we have a lot of fun with that. But I do burlesque and I bead pasties as part of my dissertation.
That's so awesome. I feel like I'm gonna have a lot of questions about that, so I'll let other folks ask other.
Do we want to start with that, or do we want to talk about writing first? Up to you. You decide.
Well, I feel like we're already talking about pasties, so.
You can't go over from there.
Yeah, like you got our attention.
You talked about boobs. I want to know more about boobs.
Okay.
We all got them.
Yeah, indeed.
True.
So what got you interested in burlesque?
It's something I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
I've always loved it. And I always, I guess, thought that I didn't have the type of body that people would see in burlesque. And so I kind of shied away from that, but secretly always wanted to do it.
Yes.
And then, you know, and Pemmican and I were talking about how we actually came to this, and we can't really decide how it actually happened, but we just kind of were talking about sexy things, and then burlesque came up, and then one thing led to another. We both ended up taking at different times a neo burlesque class, and then from there we just kind of made this burlesque group, and then next thing I know we performed in Vancouver and we're just doing burlesque, and it's just become something that I really like to do. And I love that you can do this art form that also can be like so political in nature. So like everything that I do is telling a story through dance and like making a point.
Yeah. And like for me, like, so I also do burlesque, and like I was like, oh yeah, like storytelling through burlesque, it's such an interesting, weird art form where you explain burlesque to people that don't know burlesque. It's like, well, it's kind of like dance in a way, you know, and like it's not, there isn't really anything like it. Like it really is like storytelling.
It really is. What I love about it, and as I've learned, is that literally anybody
Yes.
can do burlesque. And it's helped me to actually be more comfortable with my own body, because after, you know, I have children.
Yeah.
And so after having my children, I was like, you know, worried about how my body looks, and now I'm like, yes, I'm gonna shake all of this.
Yeah.
And it's just a way of you know, I guess giving me back some bodily autonomy that perhaps I had lost over the years.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like decolonizing sexuality.
100%. Yeah.
And that's something that's like, it's really hard to do, is like decolonize your sexuality. Even like myself, like I thought I was fairly, you know, like on a good path to decolonizing my own like understanding of myself and my body. But then I was like, I was so attached to stuff like wearing a bra.
Yeah.
Even though it's painful and it sucks, I've been trying to like get away from like doing that as much, but it's weird. Like you go out in public without a bra, and especially when you have a bigger chest, you're like, are people looking at the fact that my like nipples are pointed the wrong way? Like they're going towards the floor. Like, it's just, but then you're in Walmart, you're like, is everybody staring at me right now?
Yeah.
But probably nobody's looking.
Yeah.
It's true. For me, incorporating beadwork into it is really important for me. So like I can see it as like a form also of like healing. So like by taking a piece of beadwork and putting it on your body, it's a way of also kind of getting through past trauma, or trying to, I guess, deal with those things in a way that's creative in nature and tells a story, and it's just, it's so fun.
When did you start doing beadwork? And then when did you combine the beadwork and the burlesque?
Beadwork, I didn't start doing it until I was an adult. So, and actually the first time that I beaded was, well, when I really started to learn how to bead was when I was a volunteer at Human Youth Society, and we were doing a beadwork thing with some of the youth, and so I learned there, and then I just kind of kept on going from there and learned with other beaders. Tara Capo, her and I were in the same cohort, and so her and I beaded together a couple of times, and I think she's amazing. She's like ridiculously good beadwork artist. And then I just kind of went from there, and some elders from Musqueam I spent some time with as well, beaded with them, and then it's just kind of become part of what I do.
Yeah.
It became really important to me as a way of connecting, and especially like spending time with other people who bead. And then you just talk and you learn, and it's just a really good way of forming community.
And what is, just to go back, what is iHuman for people that don't know? That's okay.
No worries. So iHuman Youth Society, it's this arts-based kind of, you can see it as like a drop-in center for youth between the ages of 12 and 25. It's downtown Edmonton, kind of near Chinatown. So what it is when youth come in, they can access a fully functional art studio, sewing studio, music recording studio. They have a drama kind of theater space as well. And so the youth can come in and do these arts-based, it's not really necessarily like a programming, but they can come in and they can do these things and express themselves artistically. And then of course they have staff that can help the youth if they need in various ways. But it's just like I became really passionate about what they were doing, specifically through, they have a program for young moms. And so that was something that was really important for me. And so I was helping volunteer over in that area. And then I was in the welcome area. And I just think it's like a really amazing place for youth to come and hang out.
Cool. And then what gave you the idea to start beading your burlesque costumes?
I actually don't know how that happened, but all I know is that I was deciding I was going to make my own pasties, and I started to form them, and I realized that I wanted to bead a flower onto this thing. And I just did it. I'd never done that before. And I learned along the way that it's actually easier to bead after you've already shaped your pasty.
Right.
Because I didn't know how to make a pasty yet. But I just started doing that, and then it just kind of has become a thing. And once I'm good enough at tassels, I plan on beading tassels as well.
Nice.
But for now, it's pasties. I eventually want to also make a pasty that covers almost the entire boob, but it's still one pasty and has mammary glands on it. As I mentioned, I'm obsessed with mammary glands.
Okay.
And just have this, because that also kind of goes against what you think for a pasty, that it's like a full a full coverage. But
Right. That's awesome.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Like ribs.
Yes.
Don't know why. I'm just like skeletal.
Yeah.
So cool.
That's so cool. So, and you've performed in Vancouver?
Yeah, as part of, so we had a TP Confessions event out in Vancouver during NASA, so the North American Indigenous Studies Association had their annual conference out at UBC, so the University of British Columbia. And we went there and we presented on burlesque and about Indigenous female sexuality, but then we also performed at TP Confessions that was being held there that night. And TP Confessions being a sex positive research creation laboratory of sorts, that folks come in and it's just a really sexy night. There's usually 4-ish performers who talk about something related to the topic, and they come up and there's performers. So for us, we're burlesque performers. We got to perform alongside Virago Nation while we were there, which was so cool. They're another all-Indigenous burlesque group out in Vancouver. And other people did readings. So Tennille Campbell, for example, was there. She read from Indian love poems. So there was, it's just a night you come and people do that, and you get to put your anonymous, sexy confessions, and then people read them out throughout the show. And so it's just a lot of fun. And that's where we debuted as Pemmican Milkshake and Fanny LuPhine, and it was just pretty awesome.
That's so good. I have a question. I might cut this out. I don't know. Did Pemmican Milkshake used to be Pemmican Smoothie? Or is that another performer?
No, I think she's always been Pemmican Milkshake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because Jessie Lawyer, we know her.
Yeah, she's at Mount Royal.
Okay.
Yeah, she came to Toronto. I used to live in Toronto. And was talking about, oh yeah, my friend does burlesque and her name is Pemmican Smoothie.
That's probably Kristen.
That's probably,
Okay,
yeah, 'cause
probably
they know each
Jessie
other.
and her good friends.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, cool. So I'm like connecting all the dots in this burly, Indigenous, awesome world.
Isn't that hilarious? Like, we all kind of know each other.
I know.
5 degrees separation.
It's like, well, if you're awesome, you probably know my friend who's also awesome. and interested in these kind of things. So
Yeah. Oh, cool.
that's awesome. That's so funny. Yeah. Anyway, thank you.
I have a
Yeah.
question.
What's up?
Do you get members? Do you get new members?
So that is something that we are wanting to expand on. So right now it's just the two of us, but we definitely want to go forward from there. Right now we have a Facebook page that you can like that we have literally put nothing on. But
Nice.
we intend to make more of an effort. We have some folks who are interested in coming in as even in other roles other than performing. So there's someone who wants to come in and help with choreography, for example. We have some people who are very interested in coming and being part of performing. And we want to grow it, and we want it to become something very unique and something that more people can come and join. And so we're literally always welcoming other people. And hopefully we'll figure out an actual performance or, I guess, group rehearsal times and do that. Because right now we just do, occasionally we teach decolonial burlesque workshops.
Oh, okay.
We've done that a few times, usually during Pride Week. At the U of A, we've done that a couple of times, but we want to make it more of like a regular
Awesome.
thing. So it's in the works.
What?
It's in the works.
That's so cool. So, what does a decolonial burlesque workshop look like?
So what it looks like for us is that we talk about burlesque in a way that is, I guess, thinking through it in an ethical way.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, so oftentimes, as you would know as well, being a burlesque performer, there's a lot of burlesque that is super unethical and is not, I guess, aware of how something might be read. For example, for one of my performances, I had thought at first that I maybe wanted to wear like a nun's habit as part of a performance. But then after hearing an elder talk about how her husband still gets triggered every time he sees a priest or a nun, for me, I said, no, I can never have something like that involved in my performance. So like that's a way of doing burlesque in an ethical way.
Yeah.
But then also how we talk about the body in the performances, and that everyone's welcome to come into the space. And we do kind of like a group choreography thing, and they get to kind of learn from one another. So it's not just us leading the class, so we look at it as more of a collaborative thing, even within the space.
Another part of burlesque that's not surprised me, but like is still always there, is like an undercurrent of stealing moves and particular costume elements of costuming and different things from other cultures, namely a lot of Black and immigrant cultures. And it's like, oh, no, this isn't twerking, this is booty bumping or whatever. You know, that kind of thing, where it's like, no, like, it's fine to shake your butt, but if you're doing it in a particular way that you know came from somewhere else, then what are you doing?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's really cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish Pemmican was here to add her stuff in. Her and I, when we get talking about it together, she jokes that it's kind of like the Laverne and Shirley show, like that we're just kind of like, we don't really know what we're saying, but we will get to the point eventually.
Yeah.
Isn't that what storytelling is, though?
I guess so.
Yeah.
Take what you will, it's up to the listener.
Yeah.
At least that's what I tell myself.
I'll take you on a journey, and then we will finally get there, and my point will come across. It just might take half an hour to get there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So is that the kind of feeling that you want people to come away from your performances, or what kind of story are you typically telling, if there is a typical, I guess?
I don't know if there is a typical one. It varies, I guess. So, like, I've done one on appropriation. So in that one event, I'm reading what looks like a Bible, but as I undress the Bible, it's actually a Joseph Boyden text.
Whoa!
And the book that I've been reading and looking like I'm getting excited by, because you can see that I've stuffed another book inside of it, and it's actually Tennille Campbell's Indian Love Poems, and so then that's what I'm reading, and then I throw Boyden's book away.
Yeah.
And so I did something like that, but then I also recently did another one to Ariana Grande's song God is a Woman, but I did that based on people constantly telling us as Indigenous women that we can't achieve certain things, or that there's only so much we can do. And throughout that, it's kind of like a reclamation dance that ends literally just me in these feather pasties, just really kind of just standing still in one spot with my arms raised in the air and slowly bringing them down as it's saying God is a woman. And that one's very emotional. And even when I perform it, like, I get emotional as I'm doing it. And it was a way of, for me, reclaiming bodily sovereignty and sexuality. But so it really depends on the mood, how I'm feeling. If I'm feeling like being cheeky, or if I'm feeling like making you cry, I don't know.
You're not stuck to one genre. I love it. Oh, that's so good.
I feel like I'm always cheeky.
Yeah.
A little cheeky hanging out, you know, that's...
Yep.
I love it.
Have you ever gotten any... Well, I'm thinking because I'm doing my composite exams right now, and a lot of the stuff that we have to read is very triggering, especially for an Indigenous woman who may or may not have gone through trauma. Have you ever come across any negativity around your decolonial sexuality work?
So,
if that's even the right way of describing
no,
it.
I think I know what you're asking. So there have been people who really don't understand it and don't understand why it's so important to do this kind of work, or see it as being something that wouldn't be a way that they would personally find healing or be able to deal with that. And for those people, how I talk about it is that is 100% valid, and that this isn't something that everyone has to do. I'm not telling everyone that, like, you know what, the best way to heal through things is to bead pasties or to do burlesque. But for me personally, it's been something that has given me a lot of strength and has given back to me a lot of things that were taken from me. And so it's something that I tread on very cautiously, and just like always to meet people where they're at and accept whatever their experience is, and you know, just be aware, I guess, if that makes sense.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Especially because, I don't know, some people, they're just not ready to face it yet.
It's true.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And some people, the reality is they may never be able to face it. And that's just something that is a reality, right? So it's just finding space for literally any experience and seeing all experiences as being okay.
Yeah.
Love it. Got deep there.
I have one question.
Sure.
This is always something that I just want to know. How did you come up with your name for burlesque?
Oh.
Good question.
Yeah.
Good question. So Fanny LuPhine, I came up with that name kind of a two-part reason. So one is that when I was growing up, I always had a giant ass. So I was kind of made fun of for my badonkadonk, I guess if you want to call it that. I don't know if that's a term, I don't know, whatever. But it was something that I always struggled with, and I always felt like I was really negative about that part of my body. So for me, it was like a reclaiming through the name, Fanny, highlighting the booty. And then LuPhine, for one, it's fun to say. So saying LuPhine, I think, is a lot of fun. But also it's like the idea of tying to the lupine plant, but also to the genus of wolves, and looking at how that word can tie in. So then I just added the PH, so it would say fine. But it's a way of also connecting to other than human and other than animal relations as well. So that's how I came up with that name.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I love it.
Cool.
And do you always have elements of animal or non-human relatives in your performance work? Or?
Actually, now that you bring it up, quite often.
Okay.
Quite often, yeah. I guess I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, I do.
Okay, yeah.
I often have elements of that. Not always, but I have elements of that, or I'll have things that have to do with consumption in some way as well. So I might include some kind of food item or something like that in the performance itself too. But it's something that I really like to incorporate and hadn't really thought about that much until right now.
Okay, I'm like, are you thinking this?
Yes, I am. Well, you bring up a really important point, because we're talking about sexuality, right? But sexuality isn't just like sex.
Yeah.
You know, it's so many other different things. So consuming a piece of food, depending on what it is, like, and your reaction to it, can be a very sensual, sexual experience, right?
Absolutely.
Even in, like, brushing an animal, who knows, right?
Yeah.
The word sexuality is just, I don't know, it's so open.
Totally.
That's true.
We use elements of animalistic ways, especially to describe particularly marginalized areas of sexuality, and like, ooh, like that leopard print or whatever, you know, it reads very differently in different contexts and different things like that, you know, and like especially when we're thinking about Indigenous women. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that's really cool. Yeah.
We're all just in awe. We're like, whoa, you're so
I sound
cool.
way cooler than I actually am.
Hey, well, this is a podcast, so it's okay.
Yeah. Just don't admit it.
Yeah.
No one will know.
We all sound
secret
cooler. I'm editing this.
Yeah.
Editing ourselves to sound cool.
Yeah.
And everybody else.
Little do they know, like, you
Yeah.
spend a lot of time, like, on your couch.
Yeah, it sounds so cool to be in a studio, hey? Like, yeah.
Oh, man.
Whatever you think is happening might be happening. We're in our living room. Yeah, like, it's not, the truth is revealed. Anyway.
It's
amazing.
It's all an illusion, exactly.
We're in the Matrix. Boom. So yeah, you guys want to switch gears?
Sure, yeah, let's switch gears.
Okay, well, I know. Well, we can talk about, I feel like I could talk about storytelling forever. But obviously, like, you're a storyteller in many different forms. Outside of burlesque, what other types of storytelling do you do?
So I am a creative writer and a poet. So I did have a short story, which actually is a chapter in a novel, but a short story that was published in Prairie Fire's Indian Country issue that came out last year, which was really exciting for me. I had submitted work to other places before, and I had never had anyone accept my work. So it was very exciting for me to be published in that. And then I had a few poems published in Birth Issues, which is a pregnancy and childbirth related issue. It was published in an infertility issue, actually. So I had some poetry that was published there. And I'm also a singer-songwriter, so I perform all over the place. I have one song, it's an old recording, I need to re-record it, that plays on CFWE, so it's the Indigenous Country Music Station. So I do that as well. So that's just kind of, I guess, some of the other ways that I am a storyteller.
Ooh. I want to talk about your book chapter.
Okay.
Because I really like it. I don't know. Well, as soon as I met you, we met in Paul Garrow's office, which we recorded with him as well. But he actually lent me his copy of Indian Country, and it's NDN, like the letters. And I was like, I'm going to read it. So I pumped through it, and I read your chapter. And I loved it. I thought it was really touching. And I was just like, oh my God, I love this. All my feelings just came out. Would you be able to tell? I don't know if you two have read it.
I haven't.
No? Would you
sorry.
be able to tell them a little bit about what it's about?
Sure.
Or is that too embarrassing? I don't know.
No, it's okay.
Well, I don't know.
So it's called Cuttings. And how I came to write this chapter, it's a short story now. I came to write it because I was thinking about propagation of plants, and I started thinking about spider plants and how you can take cuttings of spider plants and how they're kind of a difficult plant to kill. I mean, that doesn't mean you can't kill them, but but they're a pretty hardy plant, and how you can take cuttings upon cuttings upon cuttings, and they will, you can keep on growing these plants. And I started to think about how that can be within relationships as well. And so how if you don't take the steps to successful propagation, you're going to run into issues with transplanting your little baby spiderette. So I started thinking about a relationship between a mother and a daughter, and that there's been a breakdown of relationship through various means, and how there is that relationship that perhaps things didn't go the right way, and that things weren't the way that she had hoped to be in order to be, I guess, growing in a good way. But then I also added in a friend that she has, and that she has this relationship to, and it starts to be a sex scene. They don't end up actually having sex in the chapter, but they have this intimate moment, and I don't know if this would be something that would need to be like a trigger warning that gets discussed. I'm just saying, like, to you guys here with this, but
Sure.
So in it, she finds out that her friend has been self-harming. And she notices that she's been cutting on her ribs, so in a place where no one would be able to see it. And then she has this moment of where she comes over and she kisses the scars and talks to her about how you're beautiful and like you're okay, and that you as a person, I love you for who you are. And so it becomes this intimate moment where she's helping her friend to heal, and realizing that just because she wasn't necessarily in a good place, that she could still help someone else, and that there was this love and connection in that way. And then ultimately it ends with discussing about ways that we are interrelated, and how it talks about like menstrual blood, and it talks about all these birthing waters and how we're connected to each other through, there's that saying about how, and I believe it was Christy Belcourt who talked about this more fully, about how the egg that became you was inside of your mother when she was inside of your grandmother. And so I kind of and I've heard a few other people say that as well, but I was thinking about that idea and how that can also be how you're made up of cuttings of your ancestors and how you've continued going on from there. So that's kind of what that chapter talks about. And it also highlights bisexuality, which I think is a sexuality that often does not get discussed, or is thought of as being, well, you're just a fake lesbian, or you're just, you haven't met the right woman or man yet to fully make up your mind. So I was very specific in making this character bisexual to make that a valid way of being. And then the fact that she's also Métis, I think, kind of complicates that a little bit more for her. So not only is she Métis, but she's also bisexual. And so I did that on purpose, because I don't know that I've ever come across a text that has a Métis bisexual protagonist. So I wanted to write something that, some 15-year-old bisexual Métis girl could pick up and read and be like, hey, that's me. So that's a breakdown of that.
That's awesome. I want to read this. I'm like, that relatable content. Yes, please. Yeah.
I think that's so important. I love reading queer stories because I think that there's just not enough of them. And you're right, I've never seen any sort of Métis character that's like that.
No.
And even, I haven't seen anything.
No.
Oh, there you go, first one. So what made you decide to, I guess you said a little bit already, but what made you decide to to delve into that? Like the queer writing?
The queer writing? Well, for one, because I wasn't seeing it anywhere, and so for me, it's like if there was a story that I'm not seeing that I want to read, I might as well write it. And so that kind of led me to writing that. And I think it's so important. You see so many queer youth who are underrepresented, especially in media and literature, and I think it's just really important to have a text like that, and so I decided to write it.
If you would have seen a story like this, when you were maybe younger, how do you think that would have impacted you?
I think that for me, it would have made me feel as though who I am is okay, and that there's multiple ways of being, and that it's okay to have certain sexual desires, and that there's nothing wrong with that.
I loved it. I'm just gonna say that, I loved it. Well, I guess I would identify myself as a pansexual person. So receiving something like that and reading it and having that connection, and I don't know why, but for some reason, reading it and seeing these two women kind of get together and have an intimate moment without sex is just, I don't know. I think it's very, very powerful.
Oh, I'm glad.
So I dug it. Thank you for writing it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. Do you guys have any other questions about it?
not about this story, but I was wondering if you could talk more about your poetry,
Yeah.
which I
Sure.
also haven't read.
Worst.
Oh, man.
Shame on you.
Oh.
It's okay though, because I'm just like, I would see myself as like a fresh starting writer.
Okay.
So I feel like people would have probably are more likely to have heard some of my music, I think, than to have read my creative stuff or my poetry. So like, it's totally fine.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I'm
She's judging.
an early career writer.
Okay, good.
So a lot of my poetry obviously deals with sex and sexuality. I was actually, in my undergraduate degree, I was in this poetry class. And every week, you know, I've got some like, just like dripping poem. And my classmates would get so uncomfortable because I have to read my poetry. And it's like, I remember this one time we were given where everyone has to write the opening line of a poem and then you had to choose someone else's. And mine was, once again, I'm thinking of dessert. And so I immediately think of sex. And so I wrote a poem about thinking of dessert and turned that into a sex poem. And I just remember all of my classmates being like, does everything have to be like sex with you? I'm like, yes. It does. It absolutely does.
Why wouldn't you want it to be?
Right?
Yeah.
So good. And so I wrote a lot of poetry like that. But then this is something that I'm starting to be okay with talking a little bit more about, especially because of my research area. But so I have endometriosis, which is...
Me too.
Wow, okay.
Whoa, we're vibing.
I love this.
Yeah.
And so it has affected me physically in many ways, mentally as well.
Do you want to explain endometriosis?
Yes, I can.
Or do you want me to?
We both can.
We both can.
Okay, so endometriosis is where essentially the lining, so what is supposed to form your endometrium inside of your uterus actually grows somewhere else in your body. So it can grow on your rectum, it can grow on the outside of your vagina and your bladder, it can even go up to your diaphragm and lungs. Like it just grows and it is undetectable from the majority of different tests that people will do. So they can't see it, generally speaking, on an ultrasound or on a CT or an MRI. They have to go in there and actually see it surgically, or do a number of different tests from manually pushing on you and making you in pain to be able to see what's going on. So how it has affected me personally, and every person who has it, their experience will be different. Yes. For me, when I am ovulating, I know because I can barely walk. I'm in so much pain. When I have my actual menstrual cycle, I'm in so much pain that it's hard to get through the day. I'm just crying a lot. For me personally, it's also affected part of my bowel, so that when I actually try to have a bowel movement, I'm screaming in pain because it is so bad. And I also have very heavy bleeding because of that, or prolonged bleeding. Sometimes it won't be as heavy, but I bleed forever. And so each woman who has it will be affected differently, though. So not everyone gets the same symptoms, but oftentimes you get a lot of pain. And so actually, as a little side note to that, something I plan on doing when I get my pictures, I'm going in for a surgery. And when I will get the photos from the surgery, and I plan on beading over them.
Nice.
And so reclaiming stuff for myself by beading over this.
Yeah.
But that has also affected, for me, at least they're saying that this might be a reason why, has affected fertility for me.
Right.
So has made it so that I have struggled to be able to get pregnant. So that is another way it has affected me. And so it took me 6 years, I think, to have anyone take me seriously about it.
Yeah.
And it's the average, I think, is 7 years.
Yeah.
From the time you try to see a doctor to when you actually are diagnosed.
Yeah.
So for me, it's affected that. And so then I also started writing poetry about it, because talking about my body and how I'm feeling about my uterus. And I wrote a poem where I'm hating on my uterus and telling her why I hate her.
Yeah.
But then I wrote another poem after that where I'm apologizing. But I wrote poems about that because it's something that I don't think people talk about enough. And so
Yeah.
I was able to have a number of my poems featured in birth issues in their infertility issue.
Oh, okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you if you've had the surgery yet, and
Not yet.
yeah.
Sometime within the next 6 months.
Oh.
Yes, I'm very excited.
Yeah, yeah. I was able to have the surgery when I was in Toronto because they have a whole hospital dedicated to women, like women's college hospital. I like
Whoa.
couldn't believe it, and like, yeah, I was
That's
able to
amazing.
get in there to my gynecologist that works in there as well, and like, yeah, I was able to have this surgery where when I was in Saskatchewan, when I was 21, was when I was first experiencing my symptoms. The nurse at the time, she was like, okay, well, it's probably endo, you know, it's this thing, blah, blah, blah. Just get your babies out of the way now
Mm-hmm.
and then get a hysterectomy. I was like, I hate my current boyfriend and like, I'm like not going to have his babies.
Yeah.
I can't believe she said that to you.
I remember I was
It's
going
pretty common.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going through some issues when I was probably like 18, 19 years old, but I was like married for like almost 2 years at that point, and the nurse was and the doctor were like, well, you know, sometimes just having children makes it better, and I was like, yes, because I'm just gonna like
Yeah.
babies and like
Yeah.
not think about anything else, but I was like, that doesn't sound like a good thing for me, and
Yeah.
so like, can we explore another way than me like conceiving a child?
Yeah.
It's one of the first things that they'll tell you. They'll be like, oh, we'll just get pregnant.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but that's 9 months of not dealing with it or possibly having complications.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that doesn't like factor in the fact that that's a child
Yeah.
that you're having, or that perhaps it's all going to come back
Yeah.
afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it's been a frustrating journey. So if there's anyone who struggles with that, I'm always happy to talk to you about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's hard to deal with. And then
Well, I think just menstruating in general
Mhm.
is hard to deal with.
100%.
And every month it's different. Some months I'm like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I got this. Other months I'm like a little ball on the floor and I'm like, everything sucks
Mhm.
and I can't stop shitting. Why? Like,
Yeah. It's true.
why? Why would you get bold at the end? It's just mess everywhere. And
it's the worst.
yeah, my husband's
My husband has had to come and
Oh, yeah.
drive to the university and be like, here's your extra pair of pants. I'm like, oh my god, it's mortifying.
It's true.
yeah.
Well, and I started using cloth menstrual pads because
Yeah.
like I can't actually have anything, like I can't use tampons anymore because it's just like horribly painful for me. But I was using the heaviest absorbency cloth pad and I had it on. I went to a cooking night here in Edmonton and I went to the bathroom. I'd had this thing on for maybe 45 minutes and I bled through to my pants at this cooking event and I'm like, really? Why you gotta be like that? Like, why?
Yeah.
And so it's just like, why do our bodies do this to us sometimes? Like, why?
I don't know. I have this one friend. I used to go to yoga with her all of the time, and I'm like, I can't go to yoga today. I got my period. And she's like, why? Why don't you just like change it out? I'm like, I will not last the full hour with a super absorbent
Yeah.
tampon. And I don't want my ass sticky in the air.
Yeah.
You never know. It happens.
Yeah.
I flung. Okay, so
You
when
flung? What?
this is like the most, like one of the most, other than recently my embarrassing work incident when I was an like undergraduate student. I was going to the washroom. I just started using Diva cups and I was like, I need to like empty it and deal with it. I pulled it out and it fucking sorry, I edited out that. It flung across the bathroom like a full Diva cup. I was like, it was like on the floor and my Diva cup that was then on the floor and I'm just like, I am mortified in the bathroom at the U of A, just like, oh my god. But then I like talked to my friends who also had just started using Diva cups and they're like, I flung mine across my not at work, but they're like my bathroom at home. I'm like,
Yeah.
Oh
Diva
my
cups are
god.
hard.
It's really hard to get used to, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like almost passed out. I tried to use it and I don't know what I did. Like I think I tried to move it after it had already suctioned, and then I like had to crawl out of the bathroom because I got dizzy, and I was all like, I'm like lying on the floor. I'm like, my diva cup tried to kill me, like
Probably did.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
I just like
I
I
don't
have
use
visions of
that.
trying to take it out and like my hand just being covered in like
Yeah, oh,
blood.
yeah.
Like,
I don't
my
use
God,
it
it's so
anymore.
embarrassing.
I've just gone back to using like the natural tampon.
I do too. Yeah.
use
I don't like
pads.
using the weird
I also share
chemical
pads
stuff
with my dog, so
with your dog.
my dog is very old and has to wear a diaper,
Yeah.
and doggy pads are very expensive.
Oh.
So
They
me and my
are.
dog share pads.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aw.
Well, really random tangent.
I love that. This was a great that's a great part of this conversation. I love it so much. So we're not putting a trigger warning in. Like, we're just gonna talk about it. I love it.
Yeah.
awesome.
It's a thing. It happens.
Were you worried when you were writing your chapter that you were going to get any censorship or any negative feedback from the publishers?
I was
Okay.
a little bit worried about, well, because like even if you read it, the structure of it doesn't flow like a typical story would, I guess. It's almost written in 3 parts, but when you read them together, you can see how they're interconnected. So I worried that I would have to deal with a lot of editing or anything like that. And originally, when I heard back that I had been selected to be in it, they told me that they were only going to publish the first section because they had so many people submit, and then it was a surprise to me when the copy came in the mail and they published my whole chapter.
Wow.
So, and I didn't have any edits. So for me, it was like, I don't know for sure. There might have been like 2 things that were changed because I was like, did I write that? But just like how it was phrased, I might have phrased it that way. But to me, it was like, I don't know, it was really shocking and humbling to see that went in there like that and that there was no issues. But I guess that was the main thing I was worried about. But I knew who the editors were going to be. Mm-hmm. So, and if I say her name wrong, I'm sorry, but Katerina Vermette.
Oh, yeah.
I fangirled so hard when I saw her recently. She was at the U of A, and anyway, for the book launch of Indian Country here, I knew that her and Warren Carey were going to be editors. So in terms of like being censored for any of the content otherwise, I didn't think that would be a problem. Mm-hmm. And I actually felt really good submitting knowing that it was Indigenous people who were going to be looking at my work and that they would be the ones making the decisions on it.
Do you notice a big difference, like submitting your work to an Indigenous editor versus like in the magazines and stuff?
Well, for my poetry, I noticed a difference. So that editor, but she was pretty chill. So she had emailed me and wanted me to like maybe change a few things.
Yeah.
But then I told her no, because that changes the whole meaning of that part of the poem. And she was like, okay, fine. And then she just published it.
Nice.
But I feel like I'm sure I will come against more issues the more that I publish. I am going to be in an anthology of kind of spooky, kind of Indigenous horror stuff coming out in the fall.
That's
Yes.
Damn.
I just saw the final version of my chapter on Indigenous horror that I just published in a book
Yeah.
for an English and film anthology. They just came out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's on pre-order right
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
now. Yeah,
I'll have to read it.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Can you give us a taste of what you're going to write about? All I'm thinking about is sex with a ghost for some reason. Ghost.
It's actually like kind of, well, in essence, there is sort of. So it's that it follows this young boy. His name is Hunter. And he's just kind of like living his life, doing his thing. And there's this girl that he had been in love with. And for reasons you'll see when you read it, like they're not together anymore. And so he's kind of like living his life and he's seeing all these things, experiencing it in relationship to them. And there's always this idea of flight. It's called flight. But where he wants to eject from his body and that he's gotten to the point where he can eject from his body whenever he encounters difficult situations or he doesn't want to feel anymore. He's able to like fly out of himself. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately it ends up being that there's this creature that he ends up without giving too much away, she comes for him, essentially, is what happens. And that they together go out to feast on souls.
Love it.
That sounds amazing.
Together.
Yeah.
And, like, his name's Hunter, you know, and he goes and he's hunting.
Perfect. I like that idea though. Like, I got into an argument with somebody about that particular thing, like the way, like, I don't know how familiar they were with mental health conditions or like mental health at all.
Oh, I thought you were talking about me.
No,
like,
not
why
you.
are you looking at me? Like,
Because you're looking at me. Somebody. No, not you. Not you. Well, I think, that is totally a thing because I've experienced that too. Like, when you don't want to experience something, you just totally transport your brain without even knowing it, disconnecting, and you get so good at it that you don't even realize you're doing it until someone's sitting beside you and like, hey, what did I just say? And you're like, what? Who are you? Where are we?
Yeah.
How did I end up at the mall? I was going to work. You know, one of those things.
Oh yeah, you do that.
I do that a lot. I do that
travel
a lot
together, and I'm like,
Yeah.
you do that.
Yeah. And I just, I don't mean to. It just happens because your mind just like trains itself. So it's very interesting that you took that like route.
Yeah, and the only way, I don't actually even know how I wrote it. What I mean by that is that whenever there's a story that I'm going to tell, the best way I described it is that it almost feels like there's like a blanket that comes over me, and then it comes out, and then I know that that's just a story that I have to tell. So for that story, I was like, this is really like creepy, and I love it.
Perfect. Yeah.
And it's not like, and I like kind of like exploring that dark side and writing about that kind of stuff. I find it entertaining, which is funny because like I can't sit through a horror movie, but I can read stuff or I can write it, but I'm like the biggest baby when it comes to actually watching a horror film.
Yeah.
I won't sleep for like a week.
It's because like in a horror film, it's just so graphic and in your face is what I love about them. When you're reading horror, you can kind of have a little bit more like agency over actually like what's happening or
That's
how it's
true.
like
Or how you
presented,
imagine
or how
it.
you imagine it. Yeah, it's not so just like here's all the blood, which I'm all about that. I'm like pour more blood
I don't
on
mind
her.
the gore. I don't mind the gore.
For me, it's the sound. Like, I'm really sensitive to sound.
No.
So I love graphic novel, like horror graphic novels.
yeah.
I love them.
Me too.
But not
They're
movies.
good.
I can't.
Oh, I love movies. I'm like, yes, but I want to see it where it's like the slasher is not like a dude. It's like a woman chasing some dude through the woods and it's like, I'm gonna stab you. But that's never the way that it is. It's always a guy. And I'm like, where's the female like slashers? Like, where's the female Leatherface chasing some dude around with a chainsaw?
She's in this living room.
Probably. I was like, yesterday I said I was just fueled on rage and caffeine like all day, and that was my life. Like, one day it's gonna like manifest, and it's
gonna happen.
I mean, I do live in a house with a murder basement, so the murder pit.
That's Freddy Krueger's lair. You think?
Maybe.
That's what I think. The
Freddy
Ring
Krueger?
in the ring houses, if you've ever been into them, the basement looks like Freddy Krueger's house. Or something.
I live. So did you grow up on like a farm?
I did.
Okay, so I own a 100-year-old farmhouse. It's very old, and in the basement where all the groundwater collects is just a giant pit. It's like about 9 feet deep, and I call it the murder pit in the basement.
Probably accurate.
Yeah. And like,
Yeah.
the basement's very creepy. We have like a 100-year-old septic system that has not collapsed yet. Our well is about that old. It's a big pit well, so I'm just like, we're just like the murder house on the block. Like, it looks really creepy at night too, and often like I'm just wandering around with my like blind and deaf dog and like following him around, and I'm pretty sure like people are probably like, there's just this apparition in the woods, and it's just me trying to find my dog because he's probably wandered off, and I'm just like, it's me.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, how do you go from sexuality, queer writing, horror stories to country music?
Good question.
I'm sure.
I feel like where you grew up had to do with it a little bit, maybe.
Well, when I was growing up,
Like Big Valley Jamboree.
well, yeah, I mean, Big Valley Jamboree does take place in Camrose. So we used to go and, sneak into the campsites, or we would climb up on the ski hill and just listen to the music from there. So I did grow up with that, but when I was growing up, we didn't listen to... When I was really little, we listened to a lot of country, but then my mom kind of changed a lot of the music that she was listening to, and so we didn't listen to country anymore in the house. However, at my dad's, we definitely listened to Shania Twain. So lots and lots of Shania. And then it was when I was about 12 and I got a radio. I started listening to more country music, and then, you know, LimeWire days.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Downloading all the music. And it just kind of, like, grew into a thing. And, like, I would write songs, and no matter what I would write, it always just came out country. And it's just, like, I think part of that makes sense, though, for me, when I think about it analytically. A lot of country music is storytelling. Mm-hmm. And so, especially the classic country, like, I'm a huge fan of, like, the really old classic country, you know. And it, when you listen to those stories, they're stories that people can relate to. It's songs that people can relate to. It's about your life, you know. Like, whether it's something, I don't know if I can say this, but something really shitty.
You can say.
I can say shitty. So if something shitty that happened in your life and you hear a song about it, like, it's something you can relate to. And so it just kind of, like, became a thing for me. And I didn't see it as a serious thing, I guess, probably until I was 20 or 21. Because before that, through various things that had happened to me, I didn't think that anyone would ever want to hear what I had to say. And so I kept it kind of to myself. And then all of a sudden these songs just started pouring out, and they just started, like, I would write song after song after song. I could barely play guitar. I have a recording of me very poorly on a very badly tuned guitar trying to sing. And the song's good. The accompaniment is horrible. But I kept on trying, and I just kept on doing it, and I kept on going, and then now it's just gotten to the point where I'm looking to actually record a full album in the fall. I'm looking to take it more seriously. I have 2 shows coming up in June. I've become a performer, which makes sense to me, which is also kind of funny, though, because I'm actually a very introverted person, and I'm extroverted when I'm out, but I'm actually very, like, turned inward. Mm-hmm. I'm very kind of, like, not standoffish, but I'm very cautious.
Right.
And then I get on a stage and I just, like, I perform. And so it's just, like, something I just love to do. Mm-hmm. And I think it's fun, and I like writing songs that people can relate to, so that maybe they would be able to get through something in their own life by hearing what I have to say through music.
Can I ask you a serious question?
Yes.
So when you were downloading these songs on LimeWire and writing your own, like, music, were you also playing Neopets at the same time?
100%.
Yeah, you were.
Yes.
That's what I used to do, like, download, listen to Neopets, or, like, play.
Update your Nexopia account.
Oh, yeah. I so had Nexopia.
Sexy Snow Bunny 13.
Oh my god.
Yeah, man. That was also my because I was not into Neopets. But I also had a Vampire Freaks account because I went through an emo phase. And I think I also was Sexy Snow Bunny something.
Oh my god. I forget what I was on Nexopia, but a couple years ago when whatever company it was that bought Nexopia was like, was this you? And, like, your whole, like, account came back, and I was like, no, it's a lie. I was in the middle of a job search. I was like, please, this is the absolute worst thing. Come back right now. Like, let this zombie die.
I went back a few years ago and actually found my old account and was somehow able to get them to, like, to reset my password and deleted the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because I look back, I'm like, oh honey, no.
Yeah.
No. Like, I can't get rid of this whole thing.
I was, like, blogging about when I first, like, my second year university, when I was, like, first, like, going to the bar, like, the gay bars and stuff in Saskatoon. I was like, you do not need this on the internet right now. Like,
Mine was like, why doesn't my boyfriend love me? You know, kind of that kind of stuff. It's like, oh wow, this is depressing.
Wow.
Mine was just a lot of like emo band song lyrics with little glitter.
Oh yeah.
Clearly.
Oh yeah.
I loved this one emo band called Bleed the Dream, and it was just nothing but like Bleed the Dream lyrics,
Oh god.
which is all about like, yes, it's very sad.
I was obsessed with the Used.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The Used. I really liked A Fire Inside, AFI.
Yeah.
Yep. Really good. Really
Yeah.
good. Oh god. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's fun.
So I think we have time for, I'd say 2 questions, because we have to ask. We have this same ending question. It seems like every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yep, I do.
Do you want to ask it?
Sure.
Ooh.
So, what advice do you have for Indigenous? Usually we say writers, but I want to leave that open to Indigenous creative folks out there. Yeah, I'll leave it like that for
stuff out.
yeah.
I would say just don't give up. So the reality of writing is that you will be rejected a lot. Even some of the best writers out there, or the most prolific writers that you know by name, they've been rejected too.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I would say just keep on submitting and submit everywhere and just keep on writing. And while you're at that, like keep reading as well, because the more that you read, the better your own writing is going to be. And I would just say just don't give up. And I remember when I got my first rejection, it was devastating for me. And I was really, really down about it. And like, I was like lying in bed crying, and I was like, nobody likes me. But the reality is that I kept on writing, and it got to a point where now I submit something without the idea in my head that I hope I get in. I just say like, I have sent it out, and whatever happens is what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And if they happen to accept it and want to publish it, then that is awesome. And if they don't accept it, then that's also okay, because it just wasn't the right place or the right fit for my writing. So that would be my biggest piece of advice.
And what advice would you give to non-Indigenous, maybe publishers or editors, on how to work effectively with Indigenous folks?
I think that it's really important to have Indigenous staff working with you, and then ultimately to listen to what your Indigenous writer has to say. So if there's something that they're writing about that maybe you don't understand from a cultural standpoint, ask about it rather than saying take this out. And even then, if the response that you get is that, well, I don't feel comfortable talking about with you, to accept that and just to allow people to write in the way that they want to write. You know, if someone chooses to use their Indigenous language in it, don't be so stuck on whether or not they have to italicize the word. Allow it to flow with the regular text.
Yeah.
Those would be some things that I would say.
Love it.
Awesome. Well, okay. So, to end off this amazing podcast recording, that we have had so much fun shooting, recording, whatever we're doing right now.
Hanging out.
Shooting the shit.
Hanging out in our studio. So, Tanya and Sheila, as possible future burlesque performer, and maybe one day, what are your burlesque names going to be? Have you ever thought about this?
I have not. I haven't.
What would you like to call yourself?
I don't know.
Think.
I have no idea. Well, it's hard to think when I'm on the spot like this.
Sheila, have you ever thought about it?
I'm Prairie de Vogue.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's a name I came up with when I was in Toronto, because I was like, I was really missing like the prairies.
Yeah.
And I just watched the first season of the OA, and I was like, Prairie, like the main character's name is that, and I was like, de Vogue, like obviously kind of gay. And like,
Love it.
and like, glamorous, and like living in Toronto,
Yeah.
and that's me.
Yeah, I did a session
Awesome.
with Kirsten where we made pasties for one of Tracy Bear's class. And
I was
someone
supposed to
asked,
be
like,
there.
You were, yeah. I got some great tea out of it. And somebody asked me what mine would be. And I had to think of it, and I was like, what is kind of the cutest and cheekiest, like, Cree word that I could turn into, like, a burlesque name? And I think I would call myself Wapoose the Caboose.
Oh!
So, Wapoose is a rabbit, but I could see myself in this, like, little bunny costume, just shaking my, like, because I have no waist. It's like boobs and hips, so it's like just like always, and that's something I'm also like conscious about, is the fact that I don't have like a torso. It's all like, it's like a little bit but not much. Yeah, so I was like, just Wapoose the Caboose.
I
love it. It's so good.
I feel like if I were to pick a name, it'd have to be something like satanic or something. Or
Could you just be Liz? Yeah.
Probs, probably.
Probs.
Totes. Totes my goats.
Oh
Yeah, these kids. Yeah, there you go. I'll be Ligiab. That's the devil.
Perfect.
You could be like Lily Lijab or something else.
Yeah. I'll have to have
Think
a smoke
about
and
it.
then think about it and let you know where all my good ideas come from.
Yeah.
So, to all our listeners out there, thanks for sticking around for so many episodes. We got a couple more left in season 1, and maybe look out for us in the future, shaking our stuff on the stage.
Yeah.
Yes.
The book women burlesque dancers. Yeah.
Awesome.